I have no shame in admitting this, but I'm a total nerd when it comes to old video games. I even have a collection of every old game console I owned over the course of my life. I've collected every old classic video game I could get my hands on, from the first Super Mario Bros. To Mega Man Extreme 2. You can call me a geek all you want and even scoff at me, but I'm not here to discuss my hobby. I'm here to tell you about an awful experience that I just had. Everything happened a few hours ago, by the time I'm writing this. I was doing some busy work, including checking the mailbox. The only thing I found in there was a small box with no label or return address. Curious, I took it inside and opened it, secretly hoping to get the motherboard I purchased online 3 days ago. When I opened the box, I was surprised. All I found was a disc case and a letter. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my friend Kyle, whom I hadn't heard from in almost 2 weeks. I knew that because I recognized his handwriting, but I was weirded out by how it looked. I could barely read it. It was as if Kyle was in a hurry when he wrote it. This is what it said. Tom, listen carefully. I can't take it anymore. I don't know what the hell is wrong with this thing, but it ruined my life, and worst of all, I can't get rid of it. Whenever I feel as if I'm finally free of this thing, it just keeps coming back. I believe you would have better luck since you haven't played it yet, but if you don't destroy the disc immediately, he'll go after you too. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll stop him, but do it quickly. Don't play the game, it's what he wants, just destroy it. Please. I scoffed after I read that. Even though Kyle was my best friend and I hadn't seen him in weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. Ever since I knew Kyle, he had been a notorious prankster. Most of the time he'd greet me with traps full of wet, dirty socks whenever he knew I'd visit him. One time when we were kids and slept at my house, he woke me up with a fire extinguisher and yelled that I spontaneously combusted. Sometimes I'd get upset, and other times we'd both laugh at the end of the day. But sending me a disc and a handwritten letter was really out of character, even for him. Was he trying to make me destroy someone else's work? But the best question I could think of was, who was this he that Kyle kept yammering about? I was skeptical at first, so I took out my phone and tried to call him, but the annoying voice told me to leave a voicemail. Anyway, I looked at the disc and it looked like a blank CDR disc, except it had Sonic.EXE written on it in black marker, and it was much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have asked someone else to write it. I took a picture of it in case you're curious. I smiled when I saw Sonic on the writing of the disc. For a moment, I thought about Sonic the Hedgehog. I enjoy the classic games immensely because they have always had a special place in my heart, and I think it's a shame that they became subpar after Sonic Adventure 2, but that's neither here nor there. I went to my room, placed the disc into my computer, and sure enough, the file Sonic.exe was successfully installed. Strangely, the icon was just a simple red X. I never would have expected this from a game with the name Sonic to have such a weird icon. After pondering for a bit, I decided to share my experience with those unaware of the game's existence by taking some screen caps as I played. I ran an antivirus scan just to be safe, and everything appeared good to go. Upon starting the game, the typical Sonic 1 title screen greeted me. At first, I was a tad disappointed because I already had a copy of the original game, but I shrugged since I thought it wouldn't hurt to have another. The first thing I noticed that was out of place was when I pressed start. It only lasted a second, but I still caught a glimpse of it. The whole screen turned black, but at that second, only two things remained. First, Sonic's white glove that did the finger wave contrasted with the background, while its shadow blended with it. And second was the most ominous part. What could be seen in place of Sonic's pupils, they appeared to glow red, and they seemed to look right at me. I was mildly unsettled by what I saw, but it wasn't unnerving enough to make me wet myself. The screen had cut to black for a few seconds before it changed to something entirely different. It was a dark save screen in the Sonic.EXE format, featuring a background of the sky from the Stardust Speedway and the Bad Future from Sonic CD, and 3 rectangular static boxes were hanging in the top half of each save file. At that point, I realized I was playing a hack. The save screen had 3 files already set up for me, but strangely, 2 of them were locked. The first featured Tails, the second Knuckles, and the third, Dr. Robotnik. Seeing Robotnik actually made me excited to play this. I couldn't wait to see what playing as Robotnik would be like in this hack. Finally, the music. The save screen had a weird track, to say the least. It's hard to describe it, but it sounded bit crushed, yet alien, somehow. It kind of reminded me of a part of a stereotypical jingle for a UFO, but it was on a 5-second loop. Out of curiosity, I tried to select Knuckles and Robotnik, but of course, the files were locked, accompanied by the access denied buzz sound effect. Seeing no other option, I selected Tails and pressed start, which immediately froze the music track. Nothing happened for roughly 3 seconds, and I thought the game had froze, but then I was startled when the game suddenly played a loud, echoey, bit-crushed laugh. The screen turned black again, and after a short pause, it showed the typical level title image, except the simplistic shape was dark red, and the text showed only Hill. When the screen faded in, I saw that I was in Green Hill Zone, playing as Tails. The music was very different from what I expected. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. I made Tails run forward, only to notice that he was running at his basic speed, and wouldn't go any faster, despite the level being named Hill, and indeed it used the Green Hill assets. The stage was completely flat. Tails kept running to the right for quite some time, but I saw nothing but trees. There were no flowers, obstacles, enemies, rings, or hazards. It made the place feel so lonely and dead. Soon enough, I got bored, so I just said screw this and was ready to take the disc out and destroy it like Cal told me to. But before I could do anything, something finally happened. I caught sight of something and stopped to see what it was. I saw 2 animals, to be exact. The critters you free from a badnik after destroying it. They were completely butchered. One laid on the ground in a pool of blood, and the other seemed to be hung on a tree with its own entrails. I was actually less surprised about the dead animals than I was about Tails. He actually reacted to this sight. His face, which up until now was his normal Sonic 2 sprite, was now a frightened and sickened expression. It fit the model's cartoonist style quite well, and yet the reaction felt so real. As I continued to move right, more dead animals appeared, and I decided to move slowly to make frequent stops, just to see how many different sprites there could be, and how many ways they could have been killed. Don't ask me why. Some laid in a pool of blood, or hung from trees like the first 2. Others were missing their heads, others were torn in half, and others were just ripped to shreds. It was at this point that I began to question whether it was a prank. For starters, I knew that coding was like a foreign language to Cal, and I doubt he'd ever ask someone to make a game for a single person. Besides, I've known Cal since 1st grade, and I know he wouldn't be sick enough to prank me like this. Finally, after a minute and a half of walking, the trail of dead animals stopped. Tails continued to move for a few more seconds, and then came to an abrupt stop as the music suddenly ceased. I immediately knew why. Sonic was on the other side of the screen, partially bent over, with his head facing the ground, and his eyes closed. Another strange thing that I noticed about him was that his shoes were gray instead of red. Shortly after seeing Sonic, Tails became frightened and ran to the left of the screen, but it wouldn't let him leave the scene, as if an unseen force was preventing him from leaving. I wasn't even pressing any keys to make him move during this part. The music was replaced with a loud droning sound that resembled electronic interference. Seeing that this was doing nothing, I pressed right and Tails moved towards Sonic, albeit very slowly, and the droning sound became more tense. Suddenly, I began to have a growing sense of unease as I made Tails approach Sonic to get his attention. When Tails was halfway across the screen, I realized that I was forcing him to move to the right. The thought of it made me feel somewhat dirty, but I knew it was too late to do anything about it. Eventually, Tails got close enough to Sonic, and suddenly, the hedgehog stood straight and opened his eyes, revealing that the scarer was pitch black, and his small pupils were glowing red. The second Sonic opened his eyes, the screen turned black, and the interference continued. It stayed like that for a few seconds, and then white text showed up, thankfully staying long enough for me to read it.
Hello. Do you want to play with me?
At that point, I was curious about what the game had in store for me. Before I knew it, another level title appeared: Hide and Seek. The screen faded in, and I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3, when the rainforest was on fire. With a few broken stone walls and pillars scattered around, Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. Surprisingly, he looked at the camera and made frantic gestures while pointing to the right, as if he wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I remember that some Sonic characters usually look at the screen when you complete a level, or if you don't press any keys for a while, but that wasn't the case. Tails was actually trying to tell me to get him out of there. I didn't notice it at first, but when I looked at the bottom left, I saw that Tails' name had changed to something else. Alan. I had no idea what that meant, but I knew it didn't take a cynic to realize that it couldn't mean anything good. I pressed the arrow key and made him move, but he still wasn't running at full speed. Another droning music was playing in the background, but it was less jarring and fit the setting better, being accompanied by a 16-bit crushed sounds of crackling fire. As I made him move, he went down a few platforms, and I noticed that the time wasn't counting up like usual, but once I reached the last platform, the time started counting until it reached the 10-second mark. It slowly counted back down, and finally, Tails closed his eyes and bared his teeth as he ran at full speed, even using his signature twin tails to propel himself forward. He went through a tree line, but it was no use. As soon as the time reached 0, Tails suddenly stopped moving and the time over text slid into view.
Time over.
Then the music stopped, as the text changed.
Ready or not?
Then, it happened.
Here I come.
Along with that text, I almost jumped out of my skin when I saw a close-up of this monstrous version of Sonic. His upper body filled the whole screen, surrounded by faint static. His face was grotesque, and the sprite for it was made in disturbing detail. His head appeared larger than the norm, and his face now sported a pair of dark eyes that resembled gaping holes, accompanied by an ungodly wide smile with shark-like teeth. His head rapidly jerked from left to right for a few seconds before the screen went back to normal. The music was suddenly replaced by that suspenseful drowning jingle, and I saw Sonic appear on the far left of the screen behind Tails, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying! Sonic slowly gained on Tails as the music grew intense, and the fox was struggling to keep the distance. I wanted to get away, but Tails couldn't go any faster. The song made it brutally obvious that his seconds were numbered. When Sonic finally reached Tails, I was expecting the fox to instantly die gruesomely, like the other animals, but instead, Sonic just flew past him. This made Tails trip on one of those stone bricks laying on the ground, and he started crying, looking back at his injured leg. The scene was quiet, and I couldn't help but feel that this was my doing. I was disturbed by what had just transpired, mostly because it was simply uncomfortable to watch a happy-go-lucky character like Tails in so much pain, especially at the hands of someone who was supposed to be his best friend. Of course, I knew that this was only a hacked game, but that didn't make me feel any less bad. As the seconds passed, I thought for a bit that maybe the game was finally over, but then this perversion of Sonic teleported beside Tails, but the fox was too focused on his injury to notice his tormentor. When Tails was about to turn around, Sonic reached out to his head and violently snapped his neck, making me jump in my chair. The screen cut to black, and all I could hear were these horrible sounds under a bit crushed filter. It sounded like someone was choking on their own blood as their bones were being snapped. It was like listening to someone being murdered, which made my skin crawl. Suddenly, the sounds cut off, followed by another text.
Ah, too slow. Want to try again?
I was confused by what had happened. Did Tails, no, Alan, just die? I had questions like, why did that happen, and what was the point of playing as Tails if I die without being able to do anything about it? But more importantly, I asked myself, who was Alan? Before I could ponder on that any further, I was sent back to the save screen, but now it was Knuckles' file that was open. Tails' sprite no longer existed in the main area of the save screen, but rather, he now appeared in the spot that used to contain the TV static. He looked unrecognizable. The image replacing the static was disturbing and semi-realistic. It vaguely resembled Tails, but it was reminiscent of Roadkill, with the head rotten and its teeth yellow, and bits of blood over the darkened fur. Just looking at the image made me feel sick, so I quickly looked away from it. I decided to select Knuckles to get away from the screen. When I pressed start, the game did the same thing it had done for selecting Tails. It froze for a few seconds and played the ominous laugh. The screen went black again, but after a few seconds it finally revealed its title, You Can't Run. The level was much darker than the previous ones. I could barely see Knuckles' sprite, and the ground was pitch black. The background was slightly more visible, but not by much, as I could only make out a dark, overcast sky, with its clouds moving in the wind. The music consisted of a different drowning sound, but it was also accompanied by a slow, foreboding melody I didn't recognize. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid, just like Tails did, though not as much, but rather a little unnerved. He looked as if he wasn't sure about what was going on, but despite my better judgment, I made him move anyway. At first, this level played out identically to Hill, meaning the ground was totally flat, and there didn't seem to be much to do. I braced myself for another annoyingly long stretch of nothingness, but something happened after over 10 seconds. Instead of gruesome animal carcasses, lightning flashed in the background, giving me a brief but clear look at my surroundings. It had the ground of Scrap Brain Zone, and the sky was the same as the save screen, the bad Future Stardust Speedway sky. I stopped for a bit, but nothing changed. I moved Knuckles a few more sprites to the right, and it happened again, with no apparent change. It happened twice before. Finally, something did change. The Scrap Brain ground was now rusted and ruined. I couldn't help but raise my eyebrows, as the rest seemed way too detailed compared to the rest of the level's design. After a few more flashes of lightning, I thought I saw Sonic's demonic figure hovering close to Knuckles, which made my eyes go wide. I didn't even take that screen cap. I just found it on my desktop when the game ended. Knuckles' sprite changed as he ran. He seemed more weary and exhausted. He even slowed down and stopped running to pant for a moment before dropping on one knee. But I wanted to make him escape, so I pressed harder on the right key to keep him going. I just wanted to help him run as far as possible, even if things were likely to end just as poorly as they did for Tails. I kept him running until he appeared again, right in front of Knuckles. A static filter filled the screen for a second before the scene changed to another black background. I received more text in broken but still eligible font. This confused me somewhat, as Sonic had never set anything up with Knuckles about hide and seek, but something told me he was operating by his own rules, and there probably were none. Static filled the screen again, and when it returned to the level, Sonic was standing before Knuckles, crossing his arms and grinning, his body covered in a flashing static effect. Knuckles' sprite also changed. He put up his fists, but he looked absolutely terrified, and I could make out some sweat running down his head. New music appeared in the background. The best way I can describe it is a short, repetitive, and tense melody that resembled a cacophony of notes. I don't know what it was about the music, but it somehow triggered my fight or flight response. I unintentionally looked at the bottom left of the screen, just like with Tails or Alan. The name had changed. Dave. Alan? Dave? Who the hell were these people? I instinctively walked towards Sonic. Sure enough, Knuckles, or Dave, attempted a punching animation, but before he could complete it, Sonic had teleported to the other side of the screen. I could already see where he was going, but I saw no other choice. I had Knuckles try to attack Sonic, but as expected, it was futile. Sonic always managed to warp away at the last second before Knuckles could connect a blow, and occasionally Sonic's sprites or animations changed, either mimicking Knuckles' fighting stance or just putting his hands close to his head while sticking his tongue out like a kindergarten bully. I knew what was happening. Sonic, no, whatever this thing was mocking Dave. After about 10 rounds of this, Knuckles fell to his knees while trying to hit Sonic, but the hedgehog just disappeared. While Knuckles was down, Sonic reappeared in front of him and kicked him in the face, making the echidna fall onto his back. Sonic teleported close to Knuckles, raised his arms, and plunged them into his chest, right before the screen cut to black. In a similar fashion to Alan's death, I could hear the bone-chilling sound of someone being butchered, but the voice seemed much deeper, and the cracks and gasps seemed worse. Before it ended, I could hear Dave scream for a second before the sound cut off. Then, another message appeared.
So many souls, so little time. Wouldn't you agree?
What the hell? What was going on? I started to believe that Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game for real, but I thought that must have been stupid to entertain the idea. For all I knew, it was just a well-made, albeit repetitive game with horror elements. Or maybe the game itself was some message of sorts. I'm not sure it even had one, but I just couldn't see it. I was sent back to the save screen, and similar to Tails, Knuckles was now at the top of the frame, looking worse for wear. He didn't look as realistic as Tails, but his new appearance still made me sick. His right eye was gone, while the left one seemed to bulge out of its socket, though I couldn't see a pupil. His teeth seemed bigger and crooked, with a horrible half-smile cemented onto his face. Taking my eyes off that grisly image, I noticed that the red clouds in the background had turned darker, probably signifying that the end was near and it was going to get ugly. At that point, I've had enough. I shut off the computer and decided to do something else, but as soon as I got off the chair, I had an unexplainable migraine, which intensified with every second. My head hurt so much that I felt like my skull was about to explode. I collapsed on my bed and fell asleep, though I wish I hadn't. Have you ever had a dream that felt so real it made you think it was actually happening and you remember everything vividly? It felt just like that. I was under the light given off by a lamp that hung high above my head, but everything else was just pitch darkness. I could hear the cries of different people nearby. Most of the voices weren't familiar to me, but 2 of them were. It sounded like the voices I heard in the game. Were they supposed to be Alan and Dave? They sounded like they were in despair. They were saying things like, "No, no, no, mercy! Why did you do this to us? Leave me alone. Please, I don't want to die again." Their cries died out as I heard something else. That laugh. It was the same distorted laughter I heard in the game. It was coming from different directions. I tried to look around for the source of the laugh or a way to hide or escape, but the darkness was so dense I could barely see. I saw a figure moving toward me, flickering in and out in several directions. Internally, I was screaming at my legs to get me out of there, but externally, I felt like my knees were too weak to support my weight. While looking around, I felt something grab me by the shirt and I was forced to look into something terrible. I couldn't see the face, but the red glowing pupils were the only thing that filled my vision. I startled awake. A couple of hours passed and I tried to call Kyle several times. The last time I tried, it worked and it didn't work. When I called, he finally answered, but I could only hear silence in the background. "Kyle, you there, man? What the hell did you send me?" I asked, but I didn't get a response. "Kyle, I know you're there. Cut the crap and tell me what's going on." He hung up without saying anything. I was struggling to think of what kind of person would be disturbed enough to make this hack, and why Kyle sent it to me. If Kyle was so disturbed by the game, he should have just snapped the disc. Was he even scared by it? Did he make it after all and was now screwing with me? Or maybe the letter. Was he in actual danger? Did he play the game and figure that the only way to get rid of it was to send it to me? I refused to accept it. It just didn't make any sense. Eventually, I mustered the courage to resume the game. I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening, so I reopened the game and now prepared for the next level. I'd almost forgotten that Dr. Robotnik was the last character. While I felt excited to play as him at the start of this whole ordeal, I now felt dread. If Sonic was capable of remorselessly butchering his friends, I didn't even want to think of what he would be willing to do to his worst enemy, or rather, someone taking his visage. I stopped my train of thought by pressing start, and as usual, the laugh filled the speakers. The title appeared again. This time it said, ... Just ellipses. When the level faded in, I was in a hallway with a pair of red animated curtains framing the sides of the screen. It didn't look like it was from any classic Sonic game, because it looked a lot more detailed. The floor was shiny and checkered, and the walls were made of dark purple stone bricks with animated torches. The music was a dark gothic piano tune that sounded straight from a vampire movie, but when I thought about it, I realized that it was the song from Hill, but this time it was playing normally. I have no idea if it was meant to signify something. The second thing I noticed again was Dr. Robotnik's facial expression. It gave me the impression that he was paranoid because he did a small animation as I let him stay still. He consistently looked back, as if he was making sure he wasn't being followed. I have to give credit to whoever made this hack. The facial expressions are awfully expressive, especially for 16-bit characters. I pressed right and made Robotnik move forward, and he did his usual running animation. You know, when you beat him at the end of a classic Sonic game and you chase him. I was prepared for another flat level with some twists at the halfway point, and after almost a full minute, I thought that was the case. Soon enough, I came across a downward staircase. I was honestly surprised to see something other than flat ground, but I refused to let my guard down. Shortly after going down the stairs, I stopped and decided to see if I could go back up. Only after a few steps, Robotnik fell on his big gut and slid downwards a few feet, with a small trail of dust in his wake. I'd never seen this before. It was actually pretty funny and so out of place in this otherwise dark and mysterious setting. I decided to do it again, and for the first time in hours, it managed to make me chuckle, but I stopped messing around when I realized that this could only mean one thing. There was no going back. After descending for about half a minute, I reached the bottom of the stairs and noticed that the whole setting had suddenly changed. The walls had turned a deep red, and the torches were now light blue. The checkered floor also changed color, now taking a more bluish hue, but it had also darkened somewhat. I made Robotnik stand still for a bit, and after a few seconds, I saw that he turned toward the camera, now completely nervous, as if pleading with me to help him. I never thought I'd feel bad for someone like Robotnik, but I suppose there's a first time for everything. This next hallway was much shorter than the last one, but the flight of stairs that followed wasn't. It must have taken at least a minute to get to the bottom. At this point, whatever fear I felt slowly turned into impatience. I just wanted the game to be over so I could snap the disc in half the first chance I get. When Robotnik reached the third hallway, the music had already stopped. The walls suddenly got darker than before, and the torches turned black, giving the illusion that the entire hallway was engulfed in darkness. I looked at the bottom left corner of the screen, and saw that Robotnik's name changed to that of Paul. The silence was nerve-wracking, and I waited in anticipation for the end of this. Suddenly, Sonic popped up right in front of Robotnik, just like he did with Knuckles. Robotnik's expression became one of pure fear and surprise. Then I saw something that made my eyes go wider than ever. Sonic slowly opened his mouth to a freakish proportion until it was taller than his body, with his teeth at the edges, as if ready to swallow the man whole. As the mouth opened, I could hear an otherworldly monstrous roar. Before I could see what Sonic would do, red static filled the screen, obscuring whatever horrific scene was occurring. The screen remained that way for a few seconds, enough to hurt my eyes, and then I was greeted by a game over text amid a pitch-black background, with bloody stains all over the white letters. I was expecting as much, but what I didn't expect was for the screen to flash static again and bring me back to the save screen. The background was completely black, and Robotnik was at the top of the frame, being depicted in the same tormented state as Tails and Knuckles. His skin turned a dull gray, and his mustache drooped. His eyes were now replaced with dark, hollow pits, and he had a dead-like expression on his face. My heart raced as I tried to select each of the files, but I kept getting the same access denied buzz. At that moment, the game made its point. Alan, Dave, and Paul were dead. This demonic version of Sonic may have killed them himself, but I was partly to blame. I still have no idea who these people are, but I still controlled their actions and put them through hell because of my curiosity. Before I could ponder on that, static filled the screen again for a brief moment, and I saw an animation play. I saw the unmistakable sight of Sonic's demonic red pupils glowing in the darkness and moving slowly up and down as they twitched. Then they stopped moving, and Sonic finally showed himself in a pixelated yet disturbingly detailed close-up. He looked exactly how I expected, but seeing him so close and looking directly at the screen made things so much more personal. Static filled the screen for a brief second, and the image instantly changed its quality. It appeared to be a digital artwork of this version of Sonic. It was a perfect mix of a cartoonish and photorealistic style. I mean, he looked so real. I could see the lines in his blue quills in such striking detail. His grin was so unnaturally wide and unsettling that it stretched to the sides of his face, and had very sharp fangs. They were vicious looking and somewhat yellowish, and from the look of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and teeth, as if he had eaten an animal. I stared at that gruesome image for half a minute, unable to take my eyes off it. Believe me, I tried. It felt like that monster was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face. It just took a few moments for it to etch itself into my brain for good. I remember my mind going blank. My dry mouth moved as I spoke. I don't know what compelled me to do so, but I remember asking, "What are you?" But then he decided to rub it in, because as soon as I asked that question, he did this.
You're next.
I had no words when I saw that. Did he actually hear me? Or maybe he was supposed to do that regardless. I'm not too sure. I heard his laugh again. By now, I heard it so much that I had no reaction to it, but what happened next made me react all right. Suddenly, without any warning, Sonic lunged at the screen, letting out an ungodly roar while opening his mouth to an unnatural length, revealing his gullet. It was so loud that it hurt my ears. I screamed, but fortunately, I only had to endure it for a few seconds. When I opened my eyes, I noticed that the bloody text remained, and I saw a large crack across my screen. At the time, I couldn't tell if it was actually part of the game or if the screen actually shattered. The former turned out to be so, but back then I couldn't tell. I stared at the screen for so long that I almost thought my computer had broken, but when I was about to check it for any damage, I heard a voice.
Ready for another round?
The way I heard it, it was as if someone was right behind me. The voice sounded low and demonic, yet soft-spoken. I didn't want to turn around. Then the computer shut itself off for real. For the first few minutes, I couldn't turn it back on. I sat there for a moment, thinking about what just happened. I was beginning to doubt that it was just a prank. I mean, nobody in their right mind would waste their time making a hacked game for just one person. Maybe there are more games like this that people have played and haven't revealed their existence until now. I can't get the disc out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there, but at least I managed to turn it back on now. That's how I'm able to write this recounting. I checked my screenshot file and decided to examine all the pictures I had taken, as well as some I didn't remember taking. But among those screen caps, I saw a file that shouldn't have been there. It was titled preamble.txt. I reluctantly opened it, and I was greeted with an unpleasant sight. As you can clearly see, the document was an image of that monster's face, made up of sevens, dots, and some random sentences that I still don't understand. Not too long ago, I heard my phone ring. I checked it, and my blood froze. It was from an unfamiliar number. My brain told me not to answer it, but part of me rationalized that it must have been Kyle, calling me from someone else's phone. After all, it wouldn't be the first time for that to happen. I put the phone up to my ear and spoke up. "Hello?"
Keep this interesting for me.
My heart stopped. It was the same voice I heard at the end of the game. The call suddenly ended, and before I could call the number back, I saw that I got a picture in my text messages. The moment I saw it, my heart sank. It was a grotesque but still recognizable picture of Kyle's face. His mouth was torn open, and his jaw was missing. He had an expression of terror cemented on his face. His eyes were blank, and his tongue was gone. Before I could muster a sound, I got another picture. It was a picture of a house. My house! And I got an image of a map of my street, and the location of my address was marked. The game must have given away my location to some psychopath, and he must have gotten his hands on my personal info. I want to call the cops, but I'm painfully aware that they won't get to me in time. I know I can't do anything to protect myself, and I'm absolutely terrified. I don't feel safe here, but I know that if I try to leave my room, I'd get caught by whoever is after me. I locked my door, but I doubt it'll help much. Everything I wrote describes exactly how it happened. I don't really care if you believe me or not. At the very least, I want to let you know that if the same thing happens to you, you're not alone. And if I don't make it, well, I'm sorry, Kyle. I should have listened to you.
Hello, everyone. Did you enjoy our little game? Because I sure did. If you did, don't worry. The game may be over, but the fun is just beginning.